So it's 2 years down the line. Today is 29th of May 2025. 2 years ago today, the president took over office. And since then up until now, many have lamented, many have cried, many have, spoken ill about the administration. Many are finding it funny with their businesses. Many are finding it funny with transportation. As virtually all sectors of the economy that you look at, you wouldn't see this craze, but we're going to review it because again, it's all about what we're going to be talking about today. Reviewing it, and then thereafter later we could also talk about the importance or how the Igbos generally have fared under this administration. Barrister Chukwunonso Ogbe is a legal practitioner. He joins us to talk about democracy and the governance structure in Nigeria 2 years under Tinubu's administration. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Good morning.
Well, there's no gainsaying it because, again, if I start asking certain questions, it will look like I'm not in this country. But I'm just going to go straight to it. What, for you, is the most policy that you feel that is the one that affected Nigerians the most? And do you think that maybe it was a necessary action, to move Nigeria forward?
Anyway, I think most Nigerians will agree with me that before now, and even as I speak, that Nigeria, to a great extent, is a nation that thrives on a mono economy, being the oil sector. And with the assumption of office of the current president of Nigeria on the 29th of May, 2023, Mr. President announced that the subsidy regime that was earlier in place in Nigeria, subsidy regime as far as the PMS and other sister products is concerned, that it has been removed. With the pronouncement made by the president, the most sensitive sector of the Nigerian economy became adversely affected, and which adverse consequences has affected a vast majority of the Nigerian populace, even as I speak, starting from that 29th day of May 2023. So in other words, the most sensitive policy that has been taken by this government is the fuel subsidy removal, which was done in a haphazard manner. During the 2023 general election, most of or better still, the major contenders in that election all promised to remove fuel subsidy if given the opportunity to govern Nigeria. But I think the problem has to do with the fact that the current president embarked on that line of action in a haphazard manner. He made that pronouncement without putting into consideration the adverse consequences that will follow suit. And he made that pronouncement without, in the first instance, laying the proper foundation for that policy to thrive. Because some persons who are economically inclined prior to that particular development profess that the removal of fuel subsidy will benefit the Nigerian populace. But the adverse seems to be the case, because we have a president whom we do respect is not all that, should I say, physically firm and even physically and emotionally firm at the moment to pilot the affairs of Nigeria. Because Nigeria is a complex nation, and I appreciate the fact that to govern a nation like Nigeria, one is expected to be mentally and emotionally stable, physically, mentally, and emotionally stable to govern a nation like Nigeria. And it's not peculiar to Nigeria, just like what happened in the United States. One of the reasons behind the call that was made on the former US president for him not to be Mr. Joseph Biden, for him not to participate in the last US general election was because of the fact that it was felt that he was no longer in the right frame of mind, and he was no longer physically fit to govern a complex nation like the United States, considered to be one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, one of the most powerful nations on earth. So having said that, what we witnessed in Nigeria was a situation whereby Mr. President came on board and then declared that the fuel subsidy is gone. He made that pronouncement without putting in place mechanisms to ensure that of a truth that the Nigerian people will benefit from the removal of the subsidy. as opposed to what many persons envisaged. The opposite seems to have played out. And in which case, even Mr. President, with due respect to him, his policies so far, his policies, apart from the policies of the governments or the federating units that make up Nigeria, the policies of Mr. President are not that which has so far lent credence to the fact that he actually was prepared for governance, the true sense of it. He has not been able to convince most of us that he was actually acquainted with intricacies and envisaged fallout of that particular policy that he embraced upon assumption of office. And in which case, it seems that Nigerians have been left, at the whims and caprices of fate, in which case many people are finding it difficult to attend to their basic needs presently in Nigeria. And in which case, there seems to be a wide gap between the rich and those who are wallowing in abject poverty.
Yeah, but again, like you told Olivet, it was needed. The removal of subsidy at some point would have to remove it. But even the three presidential candidates, if Atiku had won, Peter Obi had won, they would have done the same thing. You could say maybe it might not necessarily be the full removal. Some people would say like maybe staggered. Some people would say, okay, maybe go into the office, see what the intricacies are, put palliatives on the ground first before. But at the end of the day, the end point is still removal of fuel subsidy. Don't you think it was needed for us to be able to, do that? If you look at what the government has even achieved, it has mentioned that it has saved the country from bankruptcy. Countries are also willing to borrow. You remember the last time, there were countries and even organizations that were not willing to borrow Nigerian money because they don't see the pathway to recovering their money. Aside that, they have also paid up their debts, some debts that have been paid up. So you wonder really, if we're criticizing them based on removal, is it not the best thing to do so that if there's any other president that comes, nobody will come and start telling us about subsidy? Because ever since, there's always been one tool used by this successive government to, either siphon money or to hoodwink that. So any president that is coming after Tinubu, we are sure that's not going to speak or remove or do anything about subsidy. Don't you think it's a right thing in the right direction that he has done?
As I noted earlier, on the face of it, there's nothing wrong with the removal of subsidy, PMS subsidy. Ordinarily, there's nothing wrong with it, especially considering the fact that there has been a series of allegations that that particular policy has been bedeviled by corrupt practices, and in which case, in the true sense of it, that subsidy is not being paid, even prior to that pronouncement. Or better stated, that the funds mapped out for the for the subsidization of the PMS and other sister products, that most of those funds do end up in the coffers of private individuals. But the point is that as a leader, the populace also appraise your body language and what you profess and what you practice. Let me throw more light on what I've just said. If, as a president, you remove fuel subsidy, which played out under the watch of President Tinubu, and you don't have that political and leadership might to ensure that the funds realized from the subsidy removal will be used for the betterment of the Nigerian people, then you will actually worsen the situation of the Nigerian people. And that is what is playing out. I repeat again, as Mr. President did by making that pronouncement that subsidy removal will take effect upon his assumption of office, the question that an average Nigerian is now asking is this: the funds realized from that particular line of action that Mr. President told, has the funds been used in taking care of the needs of a vast majority of the Nigerian populace? I think the answer is in the negative. Some days ago, it was in the news that the members of the National Assembly are considering a request being made by Mr. President for him to borrow money, running into billions of naira, if I'm right. So if we are saying that we have recorded gains by virtue of this subsidy removal, then why is Mr. President trying to borrow money? Under the watch of Mr. President, we witnessed an overbloated cabinet. So if you have a situation whereby you have a leader who, on the face of it, wants to implement some radical policies that will benefit Nigerians on the long run, that leader is also expected to exhibit some behavioral pattern that will infuse confidence in the system that will make the populace to believe that of a truth that Mr. President wants to implement this policy for the betterment of the Nigerian people. That on his own part, that he has embarked on some noticeable, realistic adjustments. For instance, the issue of his cabinet that is overbloated. You know, we are still battling with the malice of overbloated and bureaucratic administration in the various tiers of government in the country. So you can the issue of corruption is still festering. I know as a fact that upon subsidy removal taking effect, that it was alleged that funds were dispatched to the governors of the various states or the governments of the various states to help, you know, cushion the adverse effects of the subsidy removal. And I can tell you, for instance, that in a state like Tinubu, the allegations have been raised by some persons that the funds released by Mr. President weren't utilized for the benefit of a vast majority of the people of Tinubu state. And Mr. President has not deemed it fit, for instance, to activate the instrumentality of the state to hold some of these governors responsible for the prima facie misdeeds which they have perpetrated.
No, is this his responsibility to hold them accountable? There is state out of assembly. There are people within the state. What is this his responsibility?
Mr. President also has that constitutional powers. The law enforcement agents are under the control of Mr. President. If he wants to assert that he does not fall within the ambit of his responsibilities to hold the state governments accountable, then he should also, in the first instance, not have approved the disbursement of those funds to the governments of the various federating units that make up Nigeria. Now, we saw a situation whereby funds were allegedly recouped from the removal of fuel subsidy. And then these funds were supposed to be used for the betterment of the Nigerian people. These funds were given to the governments of the federating states. And these governments failed, for reasons best known to them, prima facie, to make use of these funds for the benefit of the Nigerian people. And Mr. President, maybe because of politics or for reasons best known to him, did not take any radical measure to see to it that these funds are recovered and possibly used for the benefit of the Nigerian people. And these governors are not, most of these governors have not even come forward to tell the Nigerian people how they utilize those funds. But you know, when some of these things happen, to a great extent, the leaders are not even to blame, because with due respect to our people, we have, with due respect, an army of a docile populace. Take, for instance, in Enugu State. Many people are clapping for the governor of Enugu State that is doing wonders. But I can tell you this one, that he's not doing any wonders. In fact, the current governor of Enugu State, in my opinion, is wreaking havoc in Enugu State.
Wreaking havoc? Wreaking
serious havoc.
How?
Let me compare this current government with his predecessor. The difference between this current government and his predecessor is that his predecessor happens to be a man who was given 10 naira to work. And probably he worked with 2 naira and couldn't account for 8 naira. And then this current governor, this current government, under the watch of the current governor of the state, let me give it to him by his own ingenuity, has been able to expand, you know, his income revenue generation net. And now he has an opportunity to lay his hands on 100 naira. And now he's working with, prima facie working with 20 naira, and people are clapping. Because on the face of it, he seems to have worked in quotes, more than the previous governor. But we are not just opposing that with the funds available at his disposal. That's why he's wreaking serious havoc. But you don't have to talk much in this situation whereby you have a docile populace that are clapping for him. People who can sit down to embark on what I refer to as rational thinking. People who can actually dispassionately analyze issues. And when you even talk about the projects being executed by the current governor, for instance, many people make mention of the roads being built by the governor. Take a look at those roads. How many years will most of those roads last? These are the questions people don't ask. But let me not digress from the topic of discourse this morning. Why I raise this issue is this. If I'm right, Enugu State also happens to be one of the states that received the funds that accrued from the fuel subsidy removal. So those who are clapping for the Enugu State governor and other governors should ask them, Oga, good and fine, you are doing wonders in quotes. We would like to know if these wonders you are doing, if the funds you are using for the execution of these projects also include funds given to you from the fuel subsidy removal policy of Mr. President. If the answer is yes, then the funds your internally, your internal board of internal revenue people are seriously collecting from the Enugu State people. So where are those funds going to? For instance, in Enugu State, if I'm right, for a period of about 1 year, if I'm right, there wasn't any local government, the democratically elected local government system of government, tier of government in place in Enugu. So the funds that ordinarily should have been utilized by the leaders of the local government tier of government, if they were in power for that period of time. So where did those funds go to? Were they also used in part of the project? If the answer is yes, you now marry the projects and other activities, governance activities carried out by the governor, vis-a-vis the funds at the disposal. I raise this issue because I know as a fact that a Nigerian citizen from Enugu State took this matter to court, in which he sought information. The matter is still sub judice, even though on appellate level anyway, in which he sought information in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act from the government of Enugu State on the manner in which I think the COVID-19 palliatives were distributed. And I think this same issue, yes, the fuel subsidy removal was also raised, but many people don't ask these questions. That matter is still sub judice, so I won't delve much into it. So in a nutshell, we have a president who, the governance is not easy, but if you summon courage to remove fuel subsidy, you should also concurrently summon that courage to ensure that the profits that conventionally emanated from that fuel subsidy removal benefits the Nigerian people. And the opposite seems to be playing out. And that is why you now have an army of impoverished Nigerians. So Mr. President, with due respect, got it wrong. So maybe, for the benefit of that, maybe the other candidates who have maybe removed fuel subsidy, but they will have put in place a very stringent mechanism to ensure that the funds realized from the fuel subsidy removal will be used in taking care of other facets of the Nigerian economy. Because the argument has always been remove fuel subsidy, that the money is normally being used in subsidizing the importation of PMS and other sister products. Will now be used in developing our infrastructure, doing this, doing that, having a strong healthcare system. We'll now ask ourselves, now that fuel subsidy has been removed, have we noticed any reasonably admirable progress in the workings of the Nigerian system? And again, it is said that Nigeria is a mixed economy, that we run a capitalist, or better still, quasi-capitalist economy. But what we now have is a situation whereby we are now led in a scenario where there is a case of free for all. There is hyperinflation. If there's anything more than hyperinflation, I think that is what we are witnessing in Nigeria, in which virtually all segments of the Nigerian economy, there is this competition on who will increase the prices of his goods and services above that of his contemporary. And I think on a lighter note, it's only in the law profession, it's like we are here to increase the amount of money we charge for our professional services for those who look for trouble. And I've told people of late that this time around, if we are to represent you in court, that you are going to pay heavily because there is reckless increase in the price of goods and services in Nigeria. Just like here in Enugu State, there is this astronomical increase in the price of house rent. And when you take a look at some of the factors fueling this development, you will find out that in the first instance, this is being fueled by the culture of greed that has pervaded this environment. Because as we are indicting the government, we should also be honest enough to admit that we are also part of the stakeholders in the retrogression our society is suffering. So as I noted earlier, one of the factors behind this development is the culture of greed that has pervaded this environment, in which many of us want to acquire money by all means, be it landlords, be it tenants. Then secondly, you should also look at the policies of the government. You have a situation whereby the government, in the course of trying to implement these conventional policies, now ensures that taxes are paid, taxes should be paid, but at times even increasing taxes being paid at a geometrical speed, at a very alarming and improper proportion. But we should also appreciate the fact that in as much as taxes should be paid by the citizens, in civilized economies, where you have leaders who are in tune with the realities of the moment, in a situation of the nature that we have found ourselves in, what is usually being done is that instead of compelling citizens to pay taxes, tax waivers are given to citizens. Because it is when businesses are grown that people will now, to a great extent, be reasonably comfortable to participate happily in the art of governance. But in a situation, for instance, in the Enugu State, whereby the president removed fuel subsidy, and then the people are battling with the adverse effect of that fuel subsidy removal, and you have a government that seems to be insensitive to the plight and predicament of the people. And there is this, in my opinion, because at times you behave in a very strange manner. You may be here analyzing an issue where a vast majority of those you think you are speaking their mind may actually be comfortable with the policies of the government of the day. But from my own dispassionate perspective, I think there is serious frustration in the land. There is this feeling of despair in the land. And in which case, a sensitive government, instead of even imposing more taxes, should put in place policies that will help see to that businesses thrive. Because rest assured that many businesses are winding up in Enugu. Forget about the theories of economic growth being brandished about by some persons who are pro-government. But the reality, I speak from personal experience. I speak from the interactions I've had with up-and-coming entrepreneurs, young men and women who are trying to make ends meet. Many businesses are winding up because of the harsh economic policies emanating from this fuel subsidy removal. So in a nutshell, the president got it wrong by touching the mono economy of the Nigerian nation, being the oil sector, sequel to the fuel subsidy removal policy that was put in place, without concurrently putting in place a very strong policy framework that we see to read that the then envisaged benefits of fuel subsidy removal will trickle down to the lowest cadre of the Nigerian society. That was not to be the case. The president removed subsidy and then he allowed us to contend with fate. And I can tell you that it's not fun out there in the nation. I don't know for others, but there are those who are stupendously rich. But I can tell you generally that it's not fun at all. There is hyperinflation. Naira is basically, with due respect, valueless. You are with 100,000 naira. In the next minute, you spend the money. And the money you are talking about, you spend the money on basic necessities, even without taking care of those basic necessities of life. We are not talking about frivolities. Like, let me use myself as like I own a private football club. I won't mention the name because of the policy of the, otherwise the amount of advertisement. But that private football club now, we are on break. Why? The training ground normally make use of, they hike the price of the price of making use of their facilities. Sequence the policy of the government. And these are young men who ordinarily do make one or two pecuniary benefits, from exhibiting their skills and then, but because of that particular adverse policy of the government for a very long time now, and I can tell you many private football clubs in this city are also affected. But we have an insensitive government at the various tiers of government. People who are, to a great extent, seriously disconnected from the reality on the ground. People who govern as if they are attending to wild animals, not even domestic animals. People are crying, many people are lamenting, and you have a government busy imposing taxes recklessly. That is not the way it's been done. Let me give an example.
In just 2 minutes.
When Obama became the president of US, he didn't go about imposing taxes or enforcing taxes on a US businessman. What he did was that rather the government, his government put in place policies that sought to read that businesses were assisted to grow. It's just like opening up a new church for those who are in that line of this thing. If you open up a new church, the well-established church has to be remitting funds for that new church to grow. But if you open up a new church and you start expecting what they refer to as remitting of funds to the, but before you know it, the parishioners of the lower church will start lamenting. And before you know it, many people will start coming to church. These things play out. So that's what is playing out in Nigeria. The economy is in shambles, agreed. The masses are feeling seriously the adverse impacts of economic policies of the government, both at the federal and state level. And we are busy collecting your tax. We are very much interested, as if that's the only good thing you know about the government, imposition and collection of tax. Would that mean that our hospitals, for instance, in Enugu State, are they of world-class quality? Can the president of Nigeria come to Enugu State now to seek medical services if the president falls ill? I'm asking the government of Enugu State that question. Our schools, are they of international standard? Has the Enugu State University of Science and Technology appeared among the first 2,000 universities in the whole world, considering the enormity of funds this government has gotten? Because if you collect these funds, you are supposed to ensure that we get the best of facilities we need in our environment. That is not the case.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack, especially as it concerns this administration. We have a long week to talk about this administration. We wanted to talk about holistically, but right now it's as if our time is gone. But I'm sure that this particular Enugu State is where your mind is. But I would really love to get more information and more thinking around the conversations that we're having, especially as it relates to Enugu State. Maybe sometime in another 1 week or so, we're going to invite you, to talk holistically. We'll just focus on every sector in Enugu State, as the case may be, because we've seen several things that have been said to be done, the smart schools and the PHPs and all of those things. So we would invite you for that discussion. I want to say thank you so much, Barrister C.D. Ogbe, for your time and your analysis. It's always a pleasure having you. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Signature TV, news in your pocket.